Hi, welcome to Supplemental Sex Ed. I'm Jerry. Before we begin, I do want to let you know that this video is adult content, so 18 and over only, please. Thank you. So when we think about supplemental sex ed, it has many terms. Some call it comprehensive sex ed, some even refer to it as queering sex ed. But basically, what they all refer to is supplementing the curriculum that's currently offered in the school-based youth sexual education in public schools. Currently, there is no national guidelines or universal sexual health education offered in public schools in the United States or even private schools necessarily. What happens is from state to state, they get to decide what sort of material or content they feel is applicable to the youth in that state. And even within states, school districts can decide on their own about content or material that is covered or restricted from being covered. So what that creates as you travel across the US is a wide variety of understanding of sexual health education and some missing information. So what this leads to in youth are searching for information online and asking peers questions. While that can be a convenient avenue for them to get information, it's also pretty unreliable and can lead to misinformation being widely spread. So when you take that in comparison with studies showing the increasing rates of STIs in this country, specifically since 2014, gonorrhea has increased 67%, and chlamydia has increased 22%. Most of that increase is also shown in the youth population. So as you can see, although sexual health education although it does sort of encompass a lot of really strongly held personal beliefs, family beliefs, moral beliefs, it's also very much a public health issue. And the current rising rates of STIs make it a public health crisis. So educating youth on sexual health education is crucial. So with that in mind, I would like to talk about the accommodations as sort of twofold. There are two different levels that we can talk about. The first level will be the accommodations that you can make or adjustments you can make to the curriculum offered in public schools. There are a few things I would like to suggest, but I do want to offer a caveat with that. You always want to double check any tips that I offer here today with your local guidelines. As I suggested before, state guidelines and restrictions are different. Within each state, school districts have their own guidelines. So you do want to make sure that these tips that I offer today are not going to cross any of those lines. One of the first things that we can do is to de-gender body parts. An example of that would be, rather than saying a male this or a female that, you can say bodies with a penis or bodies with a vagina. Just removing the gender from the body part allows space for youth to start seeing themselves in these spaces and understanding their own individual bodies in a more clear way. In addition to that, we can also start normalizing the usage of pronouns. Whenever we introduce ourselves, hi, my name is Jerry, I use she, her pronouns. And we can also introduce that language into our email signatures. Just normalizing that usage of pronouns, the introduction of pronouns, and seeing that in a variety of places can really help youth to understand that there is a place for them, and that is a conversation that opens more dialogue and more understanding of individual identity. And whenever we're working within restrictions of public school settings, sometimes we really can't go any further than just offering our own pronouns, but just that little bit can offer a space for youth to think about things. Another sort of small move that actually makes a big impact or can make a big impact is putting a rainbow sticker on your door if you are in a public school setting. This can signify to youth that you are a safe person for them to talk to, ask questions. Again, you might be somewhat restricted in what you can say or discuss with the youth given your school regulations, but I would always encourage you to be upfront if youth comes to you to ask questions or discuss something, just in letting them know, I am here for you, I'm here to listen and help you in whatever way I can, but I do want you to understand these are the restrictions and guidelines that I have to work within as far as confidentiality or things that I can or cannot discuss. If you're upfront with youth, then they tend to understand why your language might be restricted, as opposed to just feeling like you're trying to keep information from them or feel like they're not, in a place to be receiving that information. So if we're in a position of not being restricted from school guidelines, if you're trying to supplement sexual health education in your own home, or if you're in a private school setting where you're not under the same guidelines, there are a few other things that we could talk about. One of the things would be consent. Now, actually, we can start sort of addressing consent even within the public school system in the way that we talk to really small children about having the ability to decide if other people get to touch their body or not. Teaching that lesson at a really young age, you can tell your friend that you don't want them touching your shoulder right now, and that's okay. You get to decide that for your own body, is a really important seed to plant for later lessons of consent and understanding what that means whenever we get to a sexual health stage in development. Now, if you're not within restrictions of schools or those guidelines, then we can talk about consent in regards to sexual health education as being enthusiastic, that we really want to make sure that our partner is expressing enthusiastic consent before we proceed, and also really reinforcing the idea that silence is also not consent. Other topics that it was shown youth were interested in learning more about was to decenter heteronormativity and monogamous relationships in sexual health education. They would like to know what other types of relationships look like, and it's something that they've definitely expressed interest in. In addition to sexual orientation, gender identity is a topic that is not only helpful for those youth that might identify as queer or be questioning their gender identity, but studies have also shown that incorporating gender identity education with youth across the board helps to encourage empathy and understanding and really decreases bullying in a community of youth as well. In addition, discussing healthy relationships, what those look like, all sorts of relationships, what consent looks like in all sorts of relationships, were both topics that youth expressed they wanted more information on. And finally, STIs. As I discussed at the top of the video, the rates are increasing. So any sort of information we can give our youth as far as symptoms, risks, treatments, or even how to seek testing and treatment in your own local area would be really good information to pass along to youth, help them be informed and make better choices for themselves, and hopefully affecting a better result in the public health situation. So thank you for joining me today. And I do want to let you know that in the description, there should be a link to a form that will give you additional resources if you would like more information on supplementing sexual health education. Thank you.